Before dawn, a bell and a soft voice move down a long wooden hall, and a row of boys sits up on thin mattresses that smell of soap and wool. The air is cool, sandals whisper. A jug of water passes hand to hand. In the courtyard, lamps glow like small moons, and the city around the barracks is still half asleep. Many historians think a Janissary recruit's day began this way, quiet, exact, and shared long before any marching or noise. But what happened between this first breath and sleep at night? How did a teenager brought into the Sultan's household learn to stand in a line that never wobbled, to shoot or draw a bow without hurting the man beside him, to eat from a cauldron that was treated like a flag? And where in such a tight, disciplined world was there space for school, prayer, laughter, and a letter home? Tonight, we will follow one full day in the 15th century, from the first wash of water to the last banked ember, and we will see how time, food, training, and rules turned strangers into a unit that walked like one person. In a moment, the door will open, and the day will begin. The road to the barracks often began far from walls or drums. A boy carried a small bundle and a name that would soon sit beside a new one. He left a village where rivers knew his footsteps and walked in a file with other boys who looked back one more time and then looked forward, because roads asked that of you. Men with ledgers and polite, practiced voices counted, guided, and made sure food and water reached the group. Many historians think this first stretch mixed worry and wonder in equal measure, fear of what you cannot see yet, curiosity about a city whose name has always sounded like a bell. In a moment, the file will pass under a gate, and the simple rules of a new household will begin to explain themselves. Along the way, there were stops where sleep came on mats under rafters that smelled of smoke and straw. The boys met older soldiers who were not fierce but tidy, who showed how to tie a belt so it did not slip, how to greet with the right level of eyes and voice. At a ferry, a petty officer checked the list again and put a thumbprint beside each name, careful because names hold people in place when feet are tired. Night arrived like a blanket, and the quiet talk turned from villagers to questions. What would the food be like? Who would stand where? How heavy were the clothes soldiers wore? In a moment, the road will end in a courtyard where bread, water, and new words wait like friendly teachers. The sorting did not start with shouting. It started with washing. A boy held a jug, poured, and learned to send the water over his hands, face, and neck in the order that would soon be a habit. Clothes were exchanged for clean, simple garments that fit many shapes. A long shirt, trousers that tied at the waist, a vest that closed without fuss. A cap sat icily on hair that had been trimmed short, not as punishment, but as a way to keep lice and heat at bay in a crowded hall. A steward showed how to fold bedding in 3 motions, so a row of mats could become a room again by daylight. It was ordinary magic, turned a sleeping place into a drill floor with 2 careful gestures and a breath. In a moment, new names will be spoken, and with them, a wider family. Paper carried the boy's village name and father's name into the registry, and then an officer added the new name that would be used in the barracks. Many recruits came from Christian families in the Balkans, and many historians think that the first weeks always included soft lessons in the faith, language, and manners of the Sultan's household. The instruction was steady, not loud: how to wash before prayer, how to stand in line without leaning, how to answer a question with words that showed both understanding and respect. Turkish words arrived like pebbles that slowly became a path: left, right, stop, begin, eat, rest. In a moment, the boy will discover that silence can be a kind of speech too. Not every recruit walked straight into the main barracks. Some were sent first to live with farming families in Anatolia or nearby towns, a practice many historians describe as a bridge between old and new. There, a boy learned to speak Turkish all day, to rise at the first light, to carry water without spilling, to help bring in olives or wheat with hands that grew sure. A year or 2 of this household schooling made bodies strong without injury, and minds calm enough to learn in crowded rooms. When he returned to the Asimi school, the novice Korsi was less a stranger to the rhythm of work and the sound of commands. In a moment, the door of the barracks will open to him again, but this time he will walk in as someone who already knows which side to stand on. The first weeks in the novice barracks felt like a long, quiet class. A senior recruit, not a harsh sergeant, demonstrated how to roll a mat, where to place sandals, when to keep shoes off the clean boards, and how to keep the hall aired, with windows that swung like patient eyes. If a boy laughed too loudly, he learned to swallow the sound without losing the smile. The line between order and fear was kept wide on purpose. Discipline came from example and constant routine rather than from blows. It is likely that there were warnings and small fines for carelessness, yes. But the strong model was the older Janissary, who could make a hall ready for inspection in 10 heartbeats, and a courtyard quiet with a gesture. In a moment, breakfast will teach its own lesson about belonging. Food arrived in big bowls with steam that made the room feel one step closer to home. Bread, a simple soup, sometimes a little cheese or olives, nothing fancy, nothing stingy. The boys learned quickly that they would eat by the kazan, the great company cauldron, an object of pride as much as of cooking. You did not jostle near the ladle. You waited your turn. You did not gossip while you chewed. You listened for small news. A steward showed how to rinse a bowl with a little water and pass that water to a tree rather than waste it. These were the small teachings that make a crowded life clean. In a moment, the bell from the hook will sound, and standing practice will begin. Standing is not the absence of motion. It is motion turned inward. Recruits learned to place their feet like doors on hinges, to breathe in a way that kept shoulders steady, to hold a line that did not ripple even when a fly wanted to crawl on a cheek. Many misunderstandings about elite troops imagine thunder and noise. The first quality taught here was quiet. A boy with a restless knee learned to press his toes into the ground and borrow stillness from the earth. Every few moments, a senior would walk along the line, adjust a wrist, tilt a chin, and murmur a word the way a tailor adjusts a sleeve so it falls right. In a moment, movement will start, and the hall will become a school of feet. Walking in step began with soft commands and wooden sandals that scraped lightly in time. Left, right, halt. The words became part of the body's own speech. The line turned corners like a ribbon, crossed the yard, and returned so that boys could feel what it meant to be near others without touching. There was nothing heroic about it, and everything essential. When you move safely in a group, you keep both your own bones and your friends' bones unbroken. That is the kind of safety the first weeks protected. In a moment, language will become sharper, because orders must carry far without shouting. Turkish drills had a music of their own. Recruits repeated the words until the tongue placed them in the same order every time. A scribe chalked short lists on a board, number names for counting off, simple verbs for starting and stopping tasks, respectful titles for the men who would one day lead them into more serious work. Boys copied those lists in small notebooks when they could. Some learned the Arabic letters used for writing, tracing lines that were part art, part habit. Reading would be as useful for pay and rations as for prayer, and early lessons mixed both. In a moment, we will step into the little schoolroom where books sat beside bundles of rope. The barracks school was a room of modest size with a lamp that gave a hopeful circle of light. On long afternoons, it smelled of wood shavings, paper, and the starch of laundered cloth. Recruits took turns at chore sweeping, bringing water, polishing the brass on a door end, then sat for letters and numbers. A teacher pointed with a reed and asked a boy to read his own name and the words, for bread, water, and rest. Another boy counted out loud as he laid beans on the mat. 4s and 5s, rations and shares. Learning was not a luxury, it was a tool. A soldier who could read a roster and check a measure would eat fairly and pay fairly. In a moment, we will return to manners, because in crowded quarters, small manners are armor. From the first day, a recruit learned how to enter a room, where to leave his sandals, how to greet with a hand to the heart, and how to make himself small when elders spoke without disappearing. Laughter had its place the courtyard, the wash line, the kitchen butt, not the inspection line. Names of days and prayers became a clock that made worry smaller. This class, afternoon, that drill before sunset. The novice also learned to care for his kit, roll cloth so it stayed smooth, keep a strap from cracking with a little oil, sew a button without making a knot fat and lumpy. These are the acts that keep a unit quiet in the night and ready in the morning. In a moment, the world outside the gate will be allowed back in. But gently. Letters were encouraged once a boy learned enough words to send them. A scribe helped, at first, turning spoken lines into neat marks. I am well. I eat. The men are strict, but not cruel. I have learned your language, and another. I can stand in line without trembling. Many historians think these letters mattered as much to the household as to the village. The cities promise food, pay later. Honor if you behave was kept in small proofs like these. A reply might include a simple blessing, a scrap of cloth with a familiar color, a reminder to keep clean and careful. In a moment, we will see how clean and careful become nearly the same word, in a place where many people share one hall. Bathing and washing clothes formed a steady rhythm in the first weeks. A novice learned that a good scrub made drills easier, and sickness rarer, that a clean shirt felt like a friend on a long day. Sheets were aired in the sun, on lines stretched from pillar to pillar, and boys learned to beat dust from blankets without shaking them so hard that neighbors walked through. A cloud. Soap was counted, water carried, and waste dealt with in ways that kept noses and tempers sweet. It was not glamorous, but it made everything else possible. In a moment, the boy will look at his cap and vest, and understand that clothing is a uniform long before it is a costume. Dress was simple, wool that kept its shape, colors that did not brag, a cap that sat low but not over the eyes. Shoes were repaired, not replaced, and a recruit was taught to make a soul last by how he placed. His heel, the famous tall Janissary headgear, would come later for men who had earned it. The novice wore humility. Even so, the mirror told a new story. A boy who had left home in mixed clothes now looked like the brothers around him. The barracks made a promise in cloth. We will make you match so you can think as one. In a moment, the promise will widen to include the sound of the day, because music and drums would one day set his pace. He would hear meta music from afar at first. The old military band that stitched pride into steps-long horns, deep drums, a rhythm that made feet want to move together. But his own day stayed soft. The beginner's world was not noise. It was counting, washing, folding, learning to breathe in a line, and learning to be kind in a space where kindness cost nothing but gave much. The myths that make Janissaries into shadows forget that all units begin as rooms full of boys who need to learn when to speak and when to listen. The first weeks taught that balance. In a moment, the day that we teased in the opening the bell, the water, the line will become a calm habit, and dawn will carry its own comfort. When sleep came, it was not heavy with fear. It was the honest tiredness of bodies that had walked, learned, and arranged their little world into order. A novice pulled a blanket to his shoulder, felt the clean seam under his cheek, and heard the small music of many people resting at once. He knew where the jug stood, where his sandals waited, where his name sat in the ledger. Tomorrow would bring the same order with one or two new tasks tucked in. We returned to the question we began, with how a boy became an Asimio clan without breaking hand. The answer is this: with water, cloth, words, and lines that moved slowly until they could move surely. In a moment, we will rise with him at dawn, and follow the early wash and prayer that made the rest of the day fit as neatly as a folded mat. Dawn belongs to water first. A boy wakes before the sky has decided on its color, and reaches for the jug by habit more than thought. The clay feels cool, the brass cup brighter than it has any right to be at this hour. He pours a little for his hands, his mouth, his face. The light wash taught yesterday and the day before, until the motions themselves begin to carry him. The floorboards answer with a soft creak, as others do the same. Many historians think this gentle wash, done without hurry, was the first lesson of the day. Clean body, quiet mind, shared time. It turns strangers in one hall into people who are awake together. In a moment, the call from outside will thread through the rafters like a ribbon. The voice that invites prayer rises from the city, as if the roofs themselves have learned to speak. It is not loud inside the barracks. The walls make it softer, like rain heard from another room. The boys stand, straighten the simple caps that sit low on their hair, and form a line that knows which way the sky turns toward the first light. An older recruit nods, and a small row shifts by inches until the feet sit like stones laid in a neat path. Nothing grand happens. That is the point. The morning shows that order can be warm. You breathe, you follow, and the day already feels smaller and kinder. In a moment, we will step into the courtyard where air moves more freely. The yard is a square of pale dust brushed smooth by yesterday's feet. Lamps along the arcade give up their last glow. Sandals sound like paper against the floor. A steward walks the edge, not to glare but to count, and to see if anyone looks unwell. He fixes a belt here, a collar there, the way a mother smooths a child's hair before a lesson. Prayer begins. Movements are simple, shared, and light on the knees. The boy does not yet know every word in the new tongue, but the shape of the prayer holds him anyway. If he loses his place, he finds it again by watching the shoulder beside him rise and settle. In a moment, the line will shift from prayer to waiting, which is its own art. After the final bow, there is a breath of stillness that feels longer than it is. Boys learn to stay in their places for a few heartbeats and let quiet finish its sentence. Then comes the soft sound of mats unrolling in a small corner for those who repeat a short recitation, and the murmur of a teacher reminding everyone to cover their mouths when they cough in cold months. The morning light, when it arrives, finds a room already tidy. In the first outline you watched bedding turn into an open floor with 2 practiced gestures. Now you see how even the pause after prayer fits like a seam in that folding. In a moment, we will follow a jug again, but to a different end. Water returns for the mouth and the teeth. A sprig of twig, chewed soft at one end, becomes a brush, and boys learn to keep it clean and to share the bucket with a hand that does not splash. The teacher jokes that a clean mouth speaks more clearly. The boys grin because jokes help memory. Sleeves are rolled in 2 turns, not 3, because 3 drips on the wrist make the cuff cold later. These are the kinds of details that keep 100 small bodies from becoming a mess. They become stories the boys tell each other. 2 turns, not 3. Rinse, then drink. Close the jug after your friend. In a moment, clothing will finish what water began. A recruit's garments are made to be both forgiving and exact. The shirt is cut wide enough to flex but fits at the neck so the collar stays out of soup. Trousers tie at the waist. The knot sits flat, never bulky, so belts and straps do not rub skin raw. A vest closes with cords that the fingers can find. In the dark, the cap asks very little. Keep it clean, keep it straight, do not tug it down over the eyes. Shoes are a lesson by themselves. There is a place where sandals wait, and a place where bare feet are required. The boy learns both without being told twice. Shoes off makes floors easy to sweep, and keeps rooms 3 shades quieter. In a moment, the first sound of the day that is not prayer will arrive. A bell, small and steady. The bell is not for alarm. It is for joining. Boys assemble by companies, and a senior recruit counts softly as they form ranks. He does not hurry. He corrects spacing with a light touch to a forearm or a nod of his chin. The boy feels his body measure itself against others, an arm's length, a hand's width, the distance of a palm between shoulders. To stand without bumping is a skill that saves bruises later. The courtyard's corners keep their secrets. The morning teaches only what is needed now. Many misunderstandings expect shouting at this hour. What the sources hint instead is a ritual of small adjustments that costs no fear and pays out safety. All day, in a moment, breath itself becomes a drill. Breathing together looks silly until you try it. The teacher raises his hand. Everyone inhales neatly. The hand drops. Everyone exhales. They repeat this while standing, then while stepping forward and back in unison, little more than a sway. The point is not mystery, it is control. The boy notices that his shoulders do not creep up when he thinks of 30 faces beside him breathing. At the same time, a row feels less like a rope pulling him, and more like a river carrying him. The teacher adds a tiny challenge hold, the breath for a count, and the line learns to wait without fidgeting. In a moment, a phrase will settle in the boy's ear and never leave. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Breakfast is not yet here, and no one pretends not to be hungry. A ladle will meet a bowl soon. For now, a steward checks nails and hands with a quick eye, and the boys show their fingers like coins. Clean hands make clean weapons later. Clean hands make healthy hauls always. The memory of yesterday's soup and bread is enough to keep focus. A novice learns to treat waiting as part of work. The call from the gate, a messenger's step, or the arrival of the pot will be folded into the morning without a ripple. In a moment, a small lesson in speech will slip into place where no one expects it. The teacher asks 3 questions in Turkish. What is your name? Which company do you stand in? Who stands to your right? The boys answer softly in order. Then, again backward. It is a language drill disguised as a roll call, or perhaps a roll call disguised as a language drill. Either way, it plants roots. The boy learns that the man to his right has a name that will matter to him for years, and that his own company name is a piece of identity he will keep cleaner than his belt. If a word fails him, his neighbor feeds it back without a smirk. That, too, is part of discipline. You keep your friend's memory as carefully as your own. In a moment, the sun will touch the wall and announce that it is time for the very first steps. Marching starts with feet, not with glory. Left, right, halt, turn 4 words in a row become the spine of the day. The boy learns to place his foot so the heel does not slap, to lift the toe so he does not trip, to stop at exactly the same instant as the man beside him. The yard becomes a quiet loom, weaving lines that cross, fold, and open. When the line pivots, the inner boy takes small steps, the outer boy takes larger ones. He learns that fairness in a turn means moving enough for your place, not more. This is the seed of later, heavier drills. Today, it is choreography that keeps knees safe. In a moment, prayer will return in a short form, not to interrupt but to seal the morning. A brief recitation follows the first walking, just a few lines. It is a reminder that effort and intention are cousins. The boy breathes a little harder now, but his mind feels cooler than before. The morning routine has placed him like a brick in fresh mortar, aligned, supported, able to support. He senses how these hours protect the rest of the day from noise. If you start with washing quiet lines, breath, and a tiny march, later lessons sit better in the head and the hands. Many historians think this sequencing lens before blade was the jadis of the novice school's success. In a moment, the smell of bread will promise breakfast, and the kazan will teach the next lesson. But one more thread remains to close the dawn. The boy's older guide points at the floor, then at the rafters, then to his own chest. Clean below, open above, steady here, he says in simple words. The recruit nods, not because he fully understands, but because his feet and lungs already agree. The courtyard has filled with light. The bell has done its work. Prayer has framed the day without pressing on it. We return to the quiet questions from the hook. What happens between the first jug of water and sleep? How a line stays smooth, where school hides in a soldier's morning, and in this hour we have answered part of them. Water, words, breath, and simple cloth have done more than any weapon could. In a moment, we will eat by the company's pot, and then take the body outside to learn how to move without harm. Because strength, in this place, always begins where control and care meet. Strength arrives quietly here. The boy steps into the yard after breakfast, and the air carries a hint of bread and soap. The ground is brushed smooth again, a pale square of dust that remembers every footstep, and then forgets it. A senior recruit claps once, not loud, and the group gathers at the edge where shade still rests. No one lifts a sword. No one even says the word. The morning belongs to the body before any blade. Many historians think this order was the secret of the school. Joints taught to obey, breath taught to pace, hearts taught to keep steady company. In a moment, the teacher will draw a line in the dust with his heel, and the lesson will begin with walking that does not look like walking. He shows how feet land under hips, not ahead, how knees stay soft like doors that know someone may pass. The boys follow in a long curve, arms hanging, shoulders loose. They look almost idle until you notice the care of every step, the same length, every head level, every breath shared. After one loop, the pace grows. They move as if late for a polite appointment. After 2 loops, the pace grows again, and now, the courtyard turns into a slow river. No one is racing. Racing breaks lines. The aim is a steady heat that comes up from the soles to the chest and sets the day's rhythm. In a moment, a boy will learn the first quiet rule of safe strength. Stop before sloppiness, not after pain. They halt before the legs wobble. The teacher lifts his palm, and the line freezes, then opens like a fan into rows with a hand's width. Between shoulders, simple stretches follow, taught by sight more than words. A spine grows long as if it were being hung up to dry. Ankles circle like mills turning. Wrists open. Fingers spread. Elbows fold and unfold. The boys learn to make space in their joints the way a scribe clears space on a page before writing. Many misunderstandings imagine elite troops waking to iron and noise. The truth, likely, was the opposite. Soft work first. Space in the body. The mind follows. In a moment, you will see how games carry lessons that drills alone cannot. The first game uses balance and trust. Two boys face each other, palms up, and step forward to touch hands like cups meeting. Each tries to tip the other off center without stepping, using only a press, a sudden release, a shift of weight. Smiles appear, then concentration. A teacher passes behind them and murmurs, "Knees." They bend. Now each boy becomes harder to move. The lesson sneaks in. A low stance is a kind stance to your own ankles and to your friends. Laughter comes when someone wiggles too much and has to step. The one who stayed steady helps him back to the line. No tally is kept. The teacher is counting something else. How quickly new bodies find safe habits. In a moment, the game changes into a walk that teaches courage without drama. Pairs link forearms and lean away like a small bridge. Together they take slow steps forward, then back, learning the feel of shared center. If one stumbles, the other takes the weight for a heartbeat. It is a quiet rehearsal for crowded moments later, when a line must move and no one can fall without touching three others. A boy who likes to rush discovers that the bridge punishes hurry. A boy who fears new steps finds that leaning makes him braver. When the teacher breaks the pairs, they bow without a show. In a moment, the first sweat glows on foreheads, and breathing grows louder, but it still rides in time. Running returns. Now, in short, measured sprints across the yard with a walk back between the body heats and cools like a well-tended bathhouse. Never too hot, never shocked with cold. The teacher marks a scratch in the dust where to stop. Each time, boys learn to halt without sliding. A heel planted under the hip, toes free, knees soft. Stopping well is as important as going another rule that keeps shins unbruised and tempers sweet. The speed increases, but only enough to invite focus, not panic. In a moment, breath itself becomes the metronome. 2 steps in, 2 steps out, then 3 and 3, and the boy discovers that counting can calm his chest. Calisthenics follow, though no one uses that word. The group lowers into squats with heels flat. They rise in time, using their arms like slings to help the movement stay smooth. They fold forward to touch the ground and stand again in a roll that keeps the back safe. A handful of push-ups, not to impress anyone but to wake the shoulders. A handful of leg lifts to remind the hips that they are hinges. The teacher stops them while they still look tidy. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, he says again, and they grin because he has found a way to put a habit into a sentence. In a moment, the lesson steps sideways into a circle where old games teach new joints. Wrestling arrives as play, not as a test. The word gür might be used, or a simpler grapple in Turkish, but the spirit is the same. Learn where your balance lives. The ground has been brushed finer here, and 2 boys step into a ring marked by a rope. They touch shoulders first, then hands, and begin a careful dance of grips. The teacher calls positions, not winners. Find the waist, feel the shoulder, step, around the heel, fold and stand. No throws yet, only placements. Many historians think recruits learned wrestling early because it builds a body that understands pressure and release without fear. The caution you see is not weakness, it is the seed of long strength. In a moment, you will watch the first controlled fall, which is the heart of safety. A senior kneels and rolls, across his shoulder like a wheel, coming up to his feet fluidly. He does it again, slower, showing the path of the head and the tuck of the chin. The boys copy him on mats, woven from reeds and felt. Some are clumsy at first, touching the back of their head to the ground. He stops them and shows the roundness again. Soon, backs roll like coins across a table. Then he adds a side fall. Slap the ground with a free arm, keep the other close, breathe out. The slap looks loud but saves ribs. A boy who feared being pushed finds that falling well can be a friend. It frees a heart to try. In a moment, the pairs return, but now with rules that keep the courtyard kind. They circle and explore grips around the waist, behind the elbow, above the knee, a gentle tug, a shift, a foot placed to block. When one starts to fall, the other follows to a knee and helps him stand. The teacher praises a clean release more than a clever trick. Anger has no place here. It burns energy that tomorrow's lesson needs. The session ends with a quick stretch and a hand-to-hand gesture that means we're still friends. The myth of constant harshness does not fit this site. The boys get sturdy without bruises that travel into the next hour. In a moment, coordination steps out of the circle and into lines again. Because marching keeps all this new strength behaved. They form ranks and practice turns that wake ankles and knees in a safer way than jumps would. Left about, right about, wheeling in fours, opening and closing files. The eye learns to measure by peripheral glance. A boy gains the strange skill of knowing where 10 people are without looking at them. The teacher adds a rhythm with his hands clap. Clap or zand, feet fall to it. Later, a drum will carry that beat across fields, but here, 2 hands are enough. A simple tag game moves in lanes. Each boy can run only in his marked stripe. The chaser may cross stripes only at the ends. It becomes a puzzle. Speed is less useful than timing and awareness. The laughter that rises is the safe kind, finished. Quickly when the clapping stops, in the space of 10 breaths, bodies return to rows, and attention returns to breath. The game leaves behind what it needed to footwork that avoids collisions, eyes that can aim to moves ahead. In a moment, stillness returns again, because the day moves like a tide. The teacher calls for silence, and the boys stand in posture that is comfortable and tall. He talks in simple words about sleep, food, and heat. Strength comes from yesterday's bread, last night's rest, today's breath. He reminds them how shoulders should feel free, how knees prefer soft landings, how elbows like to be bent rather than locked. He may not use those exact words, but the sense arrives. Take care of your hinges, and you will move a long time. Many historians think this care kept injuries low in a world without modern medicine. In a moment, the yard will offer shade, and a new station will appear at its edge. A line of low wooden horses stands against the wall, padded with folded cloth. Boys take turns swinging a leg across and balancing without feet on the ground. They sit tall, then lean, then twist, then lean back. It is not cavalry training. It is spine training. The instrument wobbles and teaches tiny muscles to wake. Another station is nothing more than a beam set a hand span above the earth. They walk along it, slow as turtles, eyes forward, arms low, learning not to stare at their own feet. Later, when weapons come, this balance will save fingers and faces. In a moment, shoulders will meet ropes. Weighted cords hang from a lintel like quiet snakes. Boys pull them down and let them rise in rhythm, learning the beginnings of a draw without a bow in sight. 10 repetitions, then switch arms, then rest. The teacher watches for tight necks and loosens them with a word. He keeps count for each boy, so pride does not steal sense. Beside the ropes sits a barrel filled with sandbags the weight of a small melon. They are lifted chest high and set down with care, not dropped. The lesson is the same. Pick up, place, breathe, stop before sloppy. In a moment, the sun will slip higher, and a break will remind everyone that water is a friend before and after work. Water is drunk in small sips, not gulps, from a shared dipper wiped between hands on a clean cloth. The teacher jokes again, sip, like a bird, not like a horse, and the laugh keeps the message in place. A few olives, a piece of bread saved from breakfast, and the yard looks different. Muscles that felt heavy feel useful again. The boys sit for a moment in the shade and stretch fingers, opening and closing fists as if counting blessings. In a moment, the final portion of the morning arrives, the part that stitches all the earlier pieces together. The class closes with a small sequence that repeats each day until bodies can find it, even in sleep. 3 slow breaths, 10 steps forward in time, a squat, a turn, a balance step, a gentle roll, a return to the line. Done well, it looks like nothing. Done often, it becomes everything. The boy starts to feel that confidence is not a shout but a smooth chain of small links that do not break. He looks to his right and left and sees the same calm starting to live in other faces. The teacher nods once and dismisses them with a word that means both enough and well. In a moment, you will notice how even the way they scatter to wash shows what they have learned. No bumping, no rush. Sandals placed so feet do not trip. As they rinse dust from arms and necks, the talk is low and friendly. You leaned too far, one says, and the other nods. You stopped like a stone, someone offers, and the praise fits better than boasting. Strength has begun without bruises, and the morning has kept its promise. Joints obedient, breath steady, minds open. We return to the question from our first hour, how a recruit is made ready to hold a blade without hurting a friend, and we can answer a little now. By turning play into practice, by stopping before sloppiness, by breathing on purpose, by keeping the ground and the body kind to each other. Soon the bell for lessons will sound, and the boys will step into a room where letters smell faintly of ink and fresh wood. The body has been prepared to sit, to write, to think. School and sweat are not enemies here, they take turns. In a moment, we will follow the boy into that quieter room, where Turkish words arrange themselves like tiles, where numbers begin to stand for bread and pay, and where a recruit discovers that a steady hand on a page is cousin to a steady hand on a spear. The room for lessons is not grand. It is a square with whitewashed walls and a window that gives a careful light, the kind that lets ink dry without glare. Benches line the sides, and a low table holds reed pens, small knives for trimming them, a clay pot of dark ink, and a stack of rough paper with soft edges. The same bodies that ran and wrestled now settle in, shoulders loose from the morning work. A boy finds that his breath, trained to move in time with others, helps his hand behave on the page. The teacher smiles when the room grows quiet on its own, as if the air knows a second kind of marching is about to begin. In a moment, the first words will touch paper, and the sound of the day will change from feet to pens. A senior recruit shows how to hold the reed, not in a fist, not at the very tip, but back a little, where the hand can guide without choking the tool. He dips, waits for a heartbeat so the bead of ink will not drop, and draws a line from right to left, because the letters they learn first are written that way. The boy copies the simple shapes that make simple words: bread, water, rest, name. He writes his own name carefully, and then traces the word for his company until it begins to live in his fingers. Mistakes do not earn a smack. They earn a new reed, trimmed to a better point, and a patient second try. Many historians think novice schools aimed for steady reading more than fancy calligraphy. Enough to read a roster, a prayer, and a short order without help. In a moment, the board at the front will fill with commands that have already been heard in the yard. The teacher writes short phrases, one beneath the other, and speaks each as the chalk moves. Stop, begin, left, right, forward, back, turn, stand, easy attention. He adds names for the men in charge: corporal, head cook, storekeeper, and sets a dot beside each. The boys repeat the words in order, then out of order, then in a slow, soft chorus that sounds like a river of consonants. The class does not shout, it hums. A recruit practices using the words in a small sentence. Turn right and bring 2 bowls. The teacher nods when the sentence lands without a bump. Language works like a drill in this room, first in a line, then in turns, then in pairs. In a moment, numbers will join the parade, because pay and rations prefer neat counting. To enthusiasm, coins on the table click like little bells. A handful of small silver pieces sits next to a string of knotted twine used for practice. The teacher lays out 2, then 3, then 5, and asks the boys to say the totals in the new tongue. He draws circles on paper and writes numbers inside. To show shares from the pot, 1 ladle for each man, 2 for the man on extra watch, a half for the boy who is sick but needs something warm. The words for handful, pinch, cup, and ladle become friends with the numbers. This is not high math, but it is the kind that keeps a hallway smooth at mealtime. A boy who can count fair will sleep with fewer enemies. In a moment, the ledger will open, and the boys will meet the book that remembers everyone without getting tired. The ledger is large and heavy, a door of paper thick with neat lines. The teacher opens to a page where columns have been drawn by rule: names, companies, days, rations, remarks. He runs a finger down the names, pausing at a familiar one, and writes in a portion of bread with a number that matches. He shows how to write a mark for presence, a mark for extra duty, and a smaller mark for a ladle given because of illness. The boy copies a pretend list onto his own page with columns that lean a little at first, and then stand straighter. This is a second memory, the teacher says, tapping the ledger. Your mind will forget after a hard week. The book will not. In a moment, the door will open for a chore, and the lesson will continue without ever calling itself by that name. Chores arrive like punctuation. A pair of boys is called to carry water from the courtyard cistern. The teacher hands them a little board with 3 words and a number. 2 buckets, return, quietly. It says in simple Turkish. They read it, grin because they can, and step out. Another pair sweeps the floor with short strokes that keep the dust low, and you can see from their posture that the morning's balance drills have already made the broom an instrument, not a stick. A third boy goes to the kitchen to ask the head cook which herbs are needed today, and returns with a list that includes a word he does not know. The teacher uses it as a gift. Here is the word for mint. Here is the word for dill. The boys breathe them in together. In a moment, the teacher will bring prayer back as a reading exercise without making anyone nervous. A short verse is written on the board in large, careful letters. It is a familiar line, one they have heard many times in the courtyard. The class reads together, not to perform but to hang sound on shape. The teacher points softly to the letters and explains a flourish here, a dot there, how 2 letters hold hands in this word, and part again in that one. The boy begins to feel that reading is not a wall, but a path, and that old words can keep pace with new duties. Where he stumbles, his neighbor prompts him. Where his neighbor stumbles, he returns the favor. It is another small drill of belonging, done with ink instead of feet. In a moment, writing returns, but not as copying this time as a letter home. The scribe sits at the front to show format, date, greeting, a simple sentence about health, one about food, one about learning. I can stand in a line. I can wash. Without being told, I can write my name, the teacher suggests as possible phrases. The boy borrows a few and adds one he invents. The men are strict but not cruel, and the bread is warm. He signs with both names, the old and the new, and the scribe shows him where to fold, so the paper stays clean on its journey. He tucks it into his shirt to give later to the clerk who sees the post. Many historians think these letters mattered. Beyond sentiment, they were proofs that the boy was inside a system that kept its promises. In a moment, the lesson will bend toward words for tools and rooms. Because a barrack speaks in nouns, the teacher holds up a strap, a belt, a buckle. He says each name, and the boys repeat. He holds up a hammer, a needle, a small jar of oil for leather, and gives those names to. He points at the ceiling and says beam, at the floor and says board, at the shelf and says hook. The words seem simple, and that is the trick. Simple words carry a day. A boy who can ask for a new buckle in the right phrase bothers fewer people, and gets his belt fixed sooner. He copies the terms into his notebook next to a small drawing, not because he is an artist, but because a picture can hold a word steady overnight. In a moment, numbers return in a new suit measures for cloth and grain. The teacher draws a line to show a length, the width of a hand, the stretch from thumb to little finger, and shows how these can stand in for standard measures when a yardstick is not close. He draws a circle and divides it like a bread, halves, quarters, eighths. Then he raises and reshapes it as a pot seen from above. 2 ladles make a bowl for a hungry man, he says, and one for a boy on watch who must not sleep. The boys mark fractions next 2 words, and the symbols begin to look like friends, not puzzles. This is the math that keeps arguments short over the Kazakh. In a moment, the lesson pauses for a small errand that works as a quiet test. A steward appears and asks for 3 boys who can read a list and fetch in order. They step up, and he gives them a slip with 5 items: rope, soap, 2 needles, 1 small pot, a clean cloth. The boys read out loud, point to each other for tasks, and go. They return with everything, placing the items in the order written. Then read back the list to confirm. The teacher writes a small note in each margin of their notebooks, nothing fancy, just a mark to say, you took words into your feet and brought them back as objects. Language turned real. In a moment, the reed pens will scratch again, this time copying something a little more ornate, to stretch the hand. Copying a proverb is a kind of mirror. The board holds a short line about patience or order, written in a slightly finer hand. The boys trace it first with a dry pen to feel the movement, then with ink, trying to keep letters even and spaces breathing. They are not making art, they are making habits. A boy dips too deep and leaves a blot. The teacher shows how to turn the blot into a tiny bird, not to be cute but to stop shame from growing teeth. In time, the blot will fade. The bird will fly, the hand will steady, laughter returns like a friend who knows when to visit. In a moment, a more practical book will rest on the table, a tiny manual of drill words. The manual is small enough to fit inside a vest. It holds lists the boys already know and a few they will meet soon, words for formations, for spacing, for weapons by name. The recruit runs his finger over spear, bow, powder. Though he has not touched the last yet, he feels the day folding school into duty without a seam. When a boy can say turn left, he can later say turn left with shield, and the brain does not panic. The teacher ends by having the class stand and recite a few lines on respect, how to speak to an elder, how to listen for a command even when tired. It is not a scolding. It is a reminder that words, like shoes, last longer when cared for. In a moment, the room will empty for midday duties, and the exercise will show its usefulness in the corridor. As boys leave, they pass a notice posted by the door with the afternoon's rota. It is written in the same hand as the ledger, and they read it without help. Who cleans the walkway? Who brings wood? Who watches the gear room? The boy pauses, matches his name to a line, and nods. He will polish door brass for an hour with a cloth and a little ash, and now he knows it before someone has to tug his sleeve. The corridor remains quiet, because paper has already done the tugging. We return to our earlier question where school hides in a soldier's day, and it is clear now that it does not hide. It walks beside every task, light as a shadow. In a moment, we will step into the kitchen yard for the lesson of the Kazan, where words like ladle and share will become hot and fragrant, and where the honor of the company will be stirred with the soup dot. The kitchen yard wakes in its own way. Smoke rises in thin lines from low hearths. A rim of blue flame licks the bottom of a blackened pot. Somewhere a bucket touches stone and makes a clean sound. The big cauldron, the Kazan, waits like a moon laid on its side. Two boys wipe its lip with clean cloths dipped in hot water, while a cook tests the fire with a stick and a stare. The smell is simple and good: onion softening, grain toasting, the warm breath of fresh bread coming from a shared oven. A novice steps through the arch and pauses the way people do when a room has rules you can feel without reading. In a moment, we will see why a pot could matter as much as a banner, and why a wooden ladle can teach fairness better than a speech. Each company has its cauldron, and that pot is counted the way a soldier is counted. It is polished when there is nothing to cook, guarded when there is. The surface shines where cloth has worked, but the belly keeps its honest soot, as if to remember labor. The cook lifts the lid, and the steam rolls up with a calm promise. Boys form into their small groups without nudging. A steward counts bowls and spoons, then counts faces, then counts again. The first ladle is always measured the same, shoulder to wrist, a smooth arc that ends with an even pour. No one asks for more, no one takes less than needed. It is not stinginess, it is a habit that makes quiet. In a moment, the grain under that steam will name itself, and the lesson of the day will be written in broth. Bread arrives with a soft knock of wooden trays. Some loaves are round and crusted, others flatter and tender, depending on the flour that week and the oven's mood. A boy learns to tear with the right hand, to offer a piece before he eats a piece, to hold his bowl steady so the trail of soup on its rim stays tidy. The soup is often lentil or chickpea, sometimes barley with greens when the market has been kind, always assisted by onion and a breath of fattle oil in some seasons, clarified butter in others. Mint or dill shows up like a friendly voice. When a cook can spare it, nothing on the spoon surprises the tongue. That is the point. Food that repeats makes drills easier to line up in the mind. In a moment, the cook will turn from soup to pilaf, and the yard will smell like a market lane in late afternoon. Pilaf is quiet science. The cook washes rice until the water runs clear, then shakes it dry the way a shepherd shakes rain from a cloak. In a broad pan he warms fat and lets a handful of noodles or a scoop of cracked wheat kiss it first, so the grain will tell him when the temperature is right. Rice goes in and turns pearly, each grain glistening without sticking. Then comes water or broth, not too much, not too little, a measure the cook could explain with a finger joint more easily than with a cup. He sets the lid and lowers the fire, by spreading embers thinner, the kind of patience a boy will need later for many things that do not involve pans. An older recruit tips his head toward the pot and whispers the house ratio to the new ones as if sharing a password. In a moment we will hear a word that lives in every corner of this yard. Hearth. The Janissaries often called their cause the okak, the hearth. It was not a casual choice. A hearth is where food begins, where warmth begins, where a day can start again after a hard hour. Guarding the kazan is guarding the hearth. On campaign, the cauldron travels with the company like a sturdy elder. In barracks, it marks the company's place like a banner that feeds you back. Later centuries told stories of times when men banged spoons on pots in protest, or overturned a cauldron to show a break with authority. Those were dramatic moments. The recruit in our quiet day hears about them only as a warning wrapped in a proverb. Do not shame your pot. For now the lesson is softer: clean it well. Keep it full, keep it safe. In a moment, we will see the small laws that live around a pot, as around a well. The kitchen has its ranks. There is a cook who knows fire like a friend, a steward who knows measures like a merchant, scullions whose hands move faster than words, and a storekeeper who sits beside the ledger with eyes that count before fingers do. The larder smells of flour and wood, and the faint sweetness of dates. Locks are simple but used, more for order than for fear. Spoons and bowls are personal. A boy may carve a small mark into his spoon's handle, not to boast, but to make sure it comes back to the same mouth each day. Bowls are washed with hot water and a pinch of ash. The water drains where it will do no harm. Before the first ladle meets the first bowl, there is a short blessing, spoken without show. It makes steam feel like thanks. In a moment, the fairness you met in the schoolroom will stand beside the cauldron and show its use. Distribution follows a rhythm that stays even when the menu changes. The watchman on late duty gets a little extra. The boy assigned to carry wood gets a cup more water, or a slice more bread. A sick recruit receives a softer bowl, thinner and warm, brought to his mat without a sigh. Feast days bend the rules in happy ways. Meat finds its way into the pot, raisins into the rice butt, the line and the measure stay. During fasting seasons, the schedule changes with the sun. Bowls meet hands before dawn and after sunset, and the kitchen turns into a quiet clock that respects both body and belief. Many historians think this steady fairness was a reason why the barracks could hold so many souls without noise. In a moment, the work around the fire will show you another secret. Cooking is training in disguise. Wood must be split and carried. The hearth must be fed with judgment, not greed. Brass needs polishing with sand until it shines like a second sun. Soot must be rubbed away without scarring metal. The big pot is heavy when empty, heavier when full, and 4 boys carry it with a yoke across their shoulders the way rivers carry boats. A teacher watches their steps and corrects a heel or a grip, because a spilled pot is not just wasted food, it is a wound to pride. Even the scraper who takes thin browned grain from the bottom learns a lesson in resource. Do not waste what is good. Do not pretend ruins are treasure. When the last bowl is filled, the boys eat standing or in small circles, backs to walls, if the yard is crowded, eyes soft. In a moment, you will hear their table rules, simple and strong. Eat with the right hand. Do not talk with your mouth full. Share what you can touch without reaching. If your neighbor's bowl looks poor, tip your own ladle once toward him, and do it as if it were normal. The first few spoonfuls are quiet, a habit as old as hunger. Then talk arrives in low lines: news of the yard, a story about the market, a joke about someone's clumsy roll this morning that finds its end quickly, because teasing does not live long here. A boy learns, without anyone telling him, that a man who eats well and shares well is easier to follow when the line moves out the gate. In a moment, music will join from far away, not to turn lunch into a show, but to remind everyone that steps have a common heartbeat. From the city below, the meter's rhythm threads the air. distant and dignified, a sound like boots and banners, rolled into one. It does not drown talk, it sits under it. The boys do not march, they eat. But the beat makes the world outside feel close and orderly. A cook murmurs a proverb, the spoon carries the heart, and no one laughs because they all feel how true it is here. Food and morale live together. The pot is a promise kept daily. You belong, you will eat, you will be asked to give, and what you give will be measured and known. In a moment, the kitchen will play the part of a school again and teach geography without a map. Grain and rice have their own roads. The cook tells a trim story while stirring. Rice can come up from Egypt on ships that smell of salt and rope. Wheat down from the Black Sea lands on barges that smell of mud and reeds. Onions from gardens just outside the city walls that smell of wet earth at dawn. Pepper and cinnamon are rare guests that travel wrapped in stories from much farther, and no one expects them to visit often. A boy learns supply routes as if he were learning the veins in a hand. He will not command ships, but he will understand why a thin week in the market means pea soup instead of pilaf. And he will not complain because knowledge has quietly folded into appetite. In a moment, we will return to the pot itself, because it teaches one last thing when the meal ends. When the last ladle is poured, the kazan is not left to dream. It is scrubbed, while still warm, turned on its side to dry, never on its mouth like an insult, and rubbed again where soot clings. The lid is set against the wall like a shield on a good nail. Bowls drain upside down along a shelf. The floor is swished with warm water and squeezed out with a bundle of reeds. A boy who earlier learned to balance on a beam now learns to balance a sloshing bucket without wetting a neighbor's feet. The yard returns to order without anyone needing to clap. Guard the pot, the cook says, and everyone hears the larger sentence that lives inside it. Guard the hearth. Guard the unit. Guard the small habits that hold the day together. In a moment, the afternoon's work will call, and the boy will stand up lighter than when he sat down. Food does more than feed. It sets a tempo. Soup early enough to lift you. Pilaf steady enough to carry you. Water in sips, not gulps, so breath keeps time. The boy feels his limbs ready for the hours ahead, not heavy and not sleepy. He pats his spoon's handle in his belt as if touching a token and checks his bowl in its place, because losing your bowl means borrowing trouble. Somewhere, a steward posts the next rota, and the letters make sense at a glance because morning ink has done its job. We return to the quiet promise we kept from the beginning, how a cauldron could be a flag, and why guarding it meant guarding honor, and you can hear the answer in the scrape of a ladle, the shine of brass, the fair count, the simple blessing, the shared silence. In a moment, the yard will turn from kitchen to corridor. The ropes you pulled in the morning will become bows with strings. The measured breath that kept steam from fogging your face will steady the line of sight, and the same patience that kept rice from sticking will keep a spear from lurching ahead of its aim. The kazan cools behind you, clean and proud, and the gate ahead opens toward practice that looks sharper but lives on the same rules. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, and nothing worth doing is done well on an empty stomach. The yard after the meal feels like a page turned. The kazan cools and gleams, and a different set of tools appears as if the kitchen had opened a second drawer. Bows sleep in their cases like curved birds. Spears lean in a tidy row. A basket holds practice sabers carved from wood, with rounded tips that look almost shy. Powder and shot do not sit in the open. They live in a locked chest under a steady eye. The boy wipes his hands once more on his belt, not because they are dirty, but because clean hands make safe tools. A truth he learned back at the pot. Breath falls into its morning rhythm by itself. In a moment, the first string will be uncoiled, and the day will take a careful step into skill. Archery begins with a bow that fits the learner, not a hero's bow. The Ottoman bow is short, strong, and built from layers of wood, horn, and sinew. But the training version greets the hand with kindness. A senior recruit shows how to hold it with the plain grip that keeps knuckles relaxed, how to stand with one foot a little ahead of the other, how to look down the line of the arrow without pressing the jaw tight. The thumb draw, famous in these lands, is explained as a matter of small shapes: thumb bent, fingers joined, a leather guard or simple ring easing the pressure. No one stamps a foot. The first arrows are loosed without sound into a long bank of straw that drinks them without complaint. In a moment, breath returns to its lesson, this time between 2 fingers and a string. They practice the cycle as a slow dance. Place the arrow, set the thumb, breathe in, settle the shoulders as if placing plates on a shelf, breathe out, and let the strings slip rather than leap. The teacher stands behind the boy and lifts an elbow with a touch that feels more like tailoring than soldiering. He says nothing for a while, waiting for habit to grow louder than chatter. Targets sit close and wide. The only goal is sameness. If an arrow goes high, the boy notes his breath. If it goes left, he notes his hand. If he fumbles, he smiles and resets. The rule from the yard still holds. Stop before sloppiness, not after pain. In a moment, the line will learn to move without tangle. Spacing becomes its own work. Arrows are carried with points down, strings are kept low, and feet remember the hand's width that morning drills taught. The boys step to the butts, pull in pairs, and return without crossing lines, a quiet choreography that saves more fingers than any guard. A senior shows an odd little exercise with a cord tied to a beam. Draw and hold without an arrow, counting heartbeats, then release into nothing to feel how clean a release can be. It looks silly, it works. After a few rounds, the string gives a different note, the one that comes when shoulders stop arguing. In a moment, the bow will rest and the spear will take the stage, bringing with it a new kind of balance. Spears look fierce until you watch them in a patient yard. The practice heads are blunt, the shafts smooth and oiled, and the first task is simply to carry them without ticking a friend's heel. The boy learns how to stand with the spear rooted by his rear foot, how to move the forward hand a small span and the rear hand a larger one, keeping the point level with the place where a man's belt buckle would be if he were standing in front of you. They lunge into a sand pit that holds the thrust the way the straw held arrows. Heels soft, elbows soft, point firm. The teacher says, 3 small rules for a long tool. The boys step back together, then forward together, discovering that spears are more about the feet than the arms. In a moment, shields will join, and the yard will feel like a conversation between wood, round shields woven from cane, or thin wooden boards, the kind that you can hold for hours without hating them lean nearby. A pair of boys now faces each other at a friendly distance. One presents the shield, angling it like a door. The other sets the spearhead lightly against it and learns the feel of a real stop. No one pushes, they learn to tap and return, to slide and return, to step and return. It becomes a slow metronome of touch. The first trick is not speed, it is not even strength. It is the miracle of not colliding with the man beside you when turning. Files wheel in 4s, then 8s, with spears held upright like saplings. A heel that wanders is corrected before it becomes a bruise. In a moment, sticks that look like swords will appear, and hands will be asked to cut air rather than targets. Wooden sabers arrive with rounded edges and a weight that tells the truth, without the danger. The shape suggests a curve like the killage worn by senior men, but the lesson today lives in wrists and steps. The teacher shows how to grip so the little finger does the quiet work and the thumb does not choke the handle. He draws lines in the dust to mark cuts, downward from right, downward from left, up like scooping water, across like drawing a curtain. The boys follow with slow, neat arcs that end before the shoulder stretches. Footwork keeps time with the hand. The front foot steps when the blade points. The rear foot helps it return. No bundles are cut. No straw explodes. The sound is only wood brushing air. In a moment, the safety on the ground will rise into a few ceremonial rules. There is a simple etiquette for blades that the boy learns the way he learned to fold a mat. Do not point a weapon at a friend. Do not swing with a circle so wide that it invites a story later. Keep the scabbard close when carrying. The way you keep your bowl close at meals. When a senior passes, lower the tip without gifts of drama. These rules look modest. They prevent harm and boast. The practice ends with a gentle check. Look at the edge, even if it is wood, as if it matters. Wipe the handle. Set the tool down with its brothers. The same care that kept the rice from sticking now keeps the yard from turning into an accident. In a moment, what many think of first with Janissaries will step into view, but we will let it arrive without sparks. Handguns are introduced with ceremony because powder gains respect simply by existing. In the late 1400s, many Janissaries learned to use matchlock arquebuses. The training range sits outside the busy yard, near an earth bank that swallows lead like a polite host. There is a bucket of water, a bucket of sand, a covered pot that keeps a slow match alive, and a man whose job today is nothing but watching. Powder horns are measured with small scoops, the way the cook measured rice. This much for the pan, this much for the barrel, the teacher says, moving with the steadiness of someone carrying soup over a polished floor. In a moment, the steps will stack like the lines in the ledger. Prime the pan, close the pan, charge the barrel, seat the ball, check the vent, bring up the match, present, breathe, squeeze. Each verb has a place, and nothing is rushed. The boy rehearses the motions first with an empty barrel, then with just a whisper of powder, then with the full measure, always under an eye, always with spacing that would make a tailor proud. When a piece misfires, it does so into a waiting plan. Lower the match, keep the barrel high, step back, wait, try again, or pass it to the watchman. The sound when it works is a dry cough against the bank, not a roar. The smell is sharp, but not angry. The line stays straight, because morning drills trained feet to trust orders more than nerves. In a moment, reloading becomes its own soft race. Against your own calm, never against your neighbor. They learn to kneel and load behind a shield board, to pass a slow match down a row like a candle at a feast, to keep ember and powder polite to each other. A senior shows how to carry a pot of live match like a lantern, with a lid ready. The boy watches how often hands stop to wipe away stray grains, how sleeves are tied back so sparks cannot find a home. The lesson is not fear, it is method. Powder likes a person who cleans the spoon before the next scoop. A few rounds later, the range smells like spent pepper, and cheeks wear a fine grey dust that the wash bucket takes away in 2 passes. In a moment, the bow will return for a short visit, because the day prefers rhythm to blocks. The teacher likes to cross-train. After the matchlocks sleep again, the line drifts back to the straw butts for a final set of arrows. Arms and backs, warmed by the guns, now find the string easier. The boy notices his release has grown cleaner simply because his mind, sharpened by the powder drill, is less eager to hurry. A handful of arrows land close enough to each other to make a neat story, and the teacher smiles with a small pride he does not put into words. Skill builds in loops. Cook, move, read, move, aim, move, breathe. Today's loop will settle into muscle while the afternoon fades. In a moment, tools will be cleaned, and the quiet work everyone forgets to describe will take its place. Cleaning is a ceremony without music. Bows are unstrung so tendons can rest. Strings are rubbed with a little wax or fat. Arrows are checked for bent shafts and split nocks. Spears get a cloth down the grain. Shield rims are tightened where cane has loosened. Wooden sabers are wiped, as if they were iron, because respect is a habit, not a material. Matchlock barrels are swabbed with damp cloths, run on rods, then dried, with another, so rust cannot sneak in while a boy sleeps. Powder horns are checked for stray sparks with eyes and a careful sniff. The ground is swept again, as if the day wishes to hide its own footprints. In a moment, the teacher will speak about safety without using the word, and it will sound like a proverb. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. He says once more, and then adds a new thread. Clean is ready, ready is kind. The boys nod because they have felt both lines in their bones all day. No weapon here is a toy. None is a terror. Each is a tool that prefers a quiet hand. The boy glances at the locked chest where powder sleeps and understands that locks are not about mistrust. They are about letting the mind relax when work is done. He looks at the spear rack, now tidy, and feels a small pride in their row the way he felt pride in the shine of the Kazan. In a moment, they will walk a few slow laps together, empty-handed, to let breath and heartbeat fold back into their normal shapes. The last minutes of the weapons block are almost monastic. The line moves, turns, opens, closes, exactly as it did before breakfast. Bodies that held bows and spears now hold only themselves, and somehow that seems like the hardest thing learned today. A senior speaks a few words about posture, not to nitpick, but to give tomorrow a place to start. You kept your elbows, he says softly to one. You watched your spacing. To another, praise is small and specific. It sticks better that way. The yard has lost its harsh shadows. The walls throw longer, kinder lines. In a moment, the gate to the corridor will return everyone to errands and small laws. If a string was left twisted, there is a fine. If a spear was set against a wall instead of on its rack, there is a reminder and a short task attached. If a boy laughed while someone loaded powder, there is a firm word that ends the habit. The rules are written on boards, and modeled even more clearly by men who have not needed boards for years. Shoes remember their places. Voices remember their sizes. The recruit feels that discipline here is a room built of many tiny bricks laid straight, not a single stone dropped from above. We return to the calm question from the start of this part, how a teenager learns to handle danger without becoming dangerous, and the answer has shown itself in every hour. By slowing, by cleaning, by counting, by breathing, by never letting pride outrun skill. In a moment, the next hour will open on those small laws more openly. The boy will meet the fines and the warnings, the gestures that halt a hall without a shout, and the older Janissaries, whose quiet habits keep peace better than threats. The Kazan taught fairness, the weapons taught method. Now the rules will knit both into a day that repeats until it feels like character. For now, he washes his hands again, the brass cup bright in his palm, and smiles at how the water carries away powder and dust, leaving only the memory of safe tools and steady breath. Discipline here is a room you step into, not a hammer you wait under. The boy returns from the yard and sees it everywhere. Sandals in a straight line near the door, mats folded in the same 3 motions, bowls drying with their mouths down like quiet birds along a shelf. No one announces these things now. They announce themselves. The first rule is not written in ink. It is written in noise, or rather in the lack of it. Silence is not a stern face. It is a soft space where orders and thoughts do not fight each other. In a moment, the small laws will show how shoes and voices travel together, and why that matters even when no officer is looking. Shoes off turns a hall into a calm instrument. Bare feet whisper. Floors stay clean. The same boards that carried sleep can carry drills without grit. Sandals wait in pairs with their faces toward the door, a habit that saves seconds when bells call. A boy who forgets once is tapped on the sleeve by a senior and meets his own sandals again, now turned around by a teasing hand so the lesson sticks. If he forgets twice, he earns a small chore that teaches order without sting. Sweeping between mats or wiping the ridge where dust collects. The correction arrives like a gentle broom, not like a storm. Fines exist, but they are the size of a nudge. A mark in the book might mean an extra hour of polishing brass or bringing water to the wash place. Repeat a mistake, and you might spend a morning guarding the gear room with a senior, learning why straps and buckles dislike chaos. Many historians think money fines were rare for novices. Work taught more and did not steal from a thin purse. The ledger's small notes are like stones along a path. They show where a foot slipped and where it walked true. A boy learns to read his own line like a weather card, and takes pride when it stays clear for a week. In a moment, we will notice how the older men enforce the rules, mostly by being themselves. The model is the strongest teacher. An older Janissary crosses a room, and sandals arrange themselves, just by watching his feet. He enters a line, and backs straighten as if a breeze had moved through wheat. He eats, and talk around him finds a respectful tone without anyone calling for it. He does not need to bark. He picks up a fallen spoon and sets it where it belongs, and the room feels as if it has exhaled. The boy watches and copies the way a child copies handwriting, stroke by stroke until it becomes his own. In a moment, we will meet gestures that carry meaning without words, because quiet cannot function without a sign language of its own. A hand to the heart means welcome. A palm down means wait. 2 fingers together and a tilt of the head can move a file of boys more efficiently than a shout. A senior raises his eyebrows and a hallway stops. He points to eyes and then to a bucket, and 2 novices remember the water that should have been there. This small grammar of movement keeps the barracks running when voice must rest. It also keeps tempers cool, because most corrections live in the body, not in pride. The boy learns to listen with his eyes and to answer with his shoulders, and that skill travels well into busy yards and crowded gates. In a moment, written rules will join the dance, but they will sound familiar because life has taught them first. On the wall near the entrance, a board lists the simple laws. Keep shoes by the door. Keep voices soft after lamps are lowered. Keep bowls and spoons clean and in their places. Keep the corridor clear for the watch. Do not point a weapon in the hall. Attend prayers and drill unless excused by the steward. The words are few. Written in a hand the boys now read easily, because morning lessons have made script a friend. Each rule carries a purpose that anyone can see. The boy feels the difference between command that protects and command that simply commands. In a moment, a few forbidden things will be named, and we will move past them without theatrics. Gambling is discouraged, then forbidden, not because a game of bones is evil, but because it breeds debt and the wrong kind of heat. Drink is watched. In some periods it is barred from the barracks outright, in others allowed only under tight eyes on rare days. Quarrels that grow teeth meet a wall of elders before they can bite. An older man will sit two hot heads on a bench, set their sandals, side by side, and make them polish brass until they can speak in lower voices. The punishment is almost a joke. It works because it replaces pride with task. Many historians think such small laws kept the Corps' reputation for order in a crowded city. In a moment, we'll return to the Kazan, for one brief rule that lives. In every stomach, food belongs to the company, not to the individual. No one hoards bread. No one saves a ladle behind the pot. A boy who tries young and hungry and foolish finds the heel he hid returned to the common board with a smile and a short lesson. What feeds all feeds you better tomorrow. In extreme times, later stories say, men could bang spoons on pots to protest a broken promise. The boy hears only the proverb version now. Do not shame your pot. The rule binds fairness to honor so closely that the line between them disappears. In a moment, we will step into night, because quiet has its own laws after lamps go low. After evening prayers, voices drop to a hum, and then to a thread. The hall breathes more than it speaks. A cough is covered. A laugh is swallowed until morning. The watch walks the corridor with steps that practice the same soft landing as drills. A boy who struggles with sleep is taught to count breaths to slow his mind, the same way he counted heartbeats holding a bow. The day's rules have been gentle practice for this moment. A quiet room is the final exam. In a moment, morning will come again, and we will see how discipline makes rest honest, not brittle. Rules also protect small joys. The bath day arrives on a schedule taped to a pillar. The room opens for an hour of stories that never grow cruel. Letters are read under a lamp with a line of boys waiting patiently for the scribe to help with tricky words. The metter's distant sound may drift by, and a boy may tap a rhythm against his knee unless it disturbs a neighbor. A system that recognizes simple pleasures holds its people closer. The boy learns that permission well given kills the need to rebel. In a moment, we will examine the watch and how it moves like a lock along the door of the night. The watch roster is read at dusk. 2 boys take the first turn, to the next, and so on until dawn. They learn to stand where the floor creaks least, to warm their hands without waking the room, to walk a route that sees water, door, chest, and rack in one loop. A slip earns a correction, sometimes a short extra turn, never a scar. The watch carries a small staff, not as a weapon but as a token of duty, passed from hand to hand with a tiny blessing. The staff is as ceremonial as it is useful. It says, "I have your sleep in my hands." In a moment, the talk will shift to records, because rules breathe easier when written down. The steward's ledger is a calm memory. It notes who kept watch, who missed for an honest reason, who earned a small task for forgetfulness. It notes the fines paid in work, the permission granted for a bath, the extra ladle taken by the boy who helped in the kitchen. These notes keep tempers from rewriting history. When a quarrel begins, the book opens and shows a line that both parties can accept. You did this, he did that, now do this. The steward says in words simple enough to leave no shadow. Numbers become kindness. In a moment, we will tie silence and shoes to safety one more time, linking small manners to big hours. A quiet hall saves ears for the drill. Ground, soft steps at night, save knees for the march. Clean sandals by the door, save floors for the hour when weapons return to racks. The rules no longer feel like rules to the boy. They feel like the way you live when many people share one roof and must face the same gate together. He sees now why silence mattered at dawn and why shoes mattered after. They are not austerities. They are lubricants that keep many cogs from grinding. We return to our earlier promise that older men model more than they command, and we have seen it from the turned sandal to the picked up spoon. In a moment, the door will open on errands that make the barracks a small city. The next hours will send the boy to a storehouse, a tailor's bench, and a pay table where coins click like little bells and names are called in an order the ledger has already rehearsed. He will see how craft keeps hands honest between drills and how a stipend travels from paper to palm without vanishing. The small laws will walk beside him, making lines form themselves and keeping rooms light with trust. And when he returns, with a bundle of cloth or a coil of rope, he will place it where it belongs without being told, because discipline has become a habit rather than a performance. In a moment, we will follow him to those errands and watch money, cloth, and service weave themselves into a day that belongs to both soldier and household. Errands begin with sunlight on brass and names in a book. The boys' company gathers at the corridor where notices live, and a steward reads the day's small tasks in a voice that sounds like swept floors. One line sends 2 to the storehouse for rope and oil. Another line sends 1 to the tailor's bench with a bundle of cuffs that need mending. The last line names those due at the pay table in the afternoon. Nothing in this list glitters, but everything in it keeps the machine gentle. In a moment, we will walk to the storehouse and see how a room of ordinary things can feel like a ship's hold full of weather. The storehouse is cool even in warm months. Its walls are thick. Its floor smells of wood and dry grain. Shelves run in sensible rows, labeled in a hand the boy can now read because morning lessons have settled into his eyes. Rope, oil, nails, cloth, wax, soap. The keeper sits at a table with a ledger open and a reed pen ready. He does not like hurry, but he likes order even more. The boy speaks the request in Turkish without stumbling. 2 coils of medium rope, 1 small jar of lamp oil, and the keeper nods as if the words themselves were neat bundles. In a moment, the pen will scratch, and the lesson from the schoolroom will return with a wink. Names, company, day, quantity, purpose. Those columns repeat like prayer, and the boy enjoys the shape of it because it makes the room feel fair. The keeper weighs the oil on a small scale with brass pans that shine like coins and ties a waxed cloth over the mouth of the jar. Rope is measured by the span from shoulder to hand, 4 times out and 4 times back, a body turned into a yardstick. The keeper marks the ledger with 1 small dot. That means returned empty jar later, and the boy signs with his new name. In careful letters, he leaves with the coil over his shoulder and the jar nested in the rope like an egg. In a moment, he will detour by the armory, because small chances to learn are part of the day's pay. The armory, where gear rests between youths, is not a cave of thunder. It is a clean, humming room. Spear shafts lean in close ranks, and men sit with cloths in their hands, rubbing oil into wood as if blessing it. A bowyer checks strings with his thumb, then warms a strand between his fingers and a pad of wool to wake the wax. A barrel of arrow shafts waits for fletching. The man at the bench ties feathers with thread so fine you would swear it is hair. The boy watches how tools are handled first, and how nobody reaches across another's work. Safety is not a thought, it is a posture. In a moment, one of the men will put a tiny task in his hands. The bowyer gives him a length of linen and a small plug of wax. Run this along the string, he says, showing the pressure with 2 fingers. Not too hard, not too soft. The boy feels the strand grow quiet under his touch, the little catch of dry fiber disappearing as wax and warmth smooth it. He turns the string and starts again, patient, counting breaths. When he finishes, the bowyer nods and says, "Clean is ready, ready is kind." The same words the teacher used in the yard sound at home here too. In a moment, we will return the rope and oil to the steward and head for the tailor. Because cloth is also a kind of armor. The tailor's bench lives in the same corridor as the cobbler's stool and the basket of half-worn soles. The tailor is a small man with a polite back and sharp eyes. He holds up cuffs that have grown too long from washing and sun, chalks a line with a swift hand, and shows the boy how to fold the cloth so the seam does not bite the wrist. A needle passes through wool in steady loops. Thread is waxed so it will not snarl. A novice who is free sits beside the bench and learns to sew a button with 4 neat crosses, each one small as the mouth of a bird. Make it strong, not proud, the tailor says when a boy pulls too tight and puckers the cloth. In a moment, the cobbler will ask for help with a shoe that tells 3 stories. Shoes speak of how a day moves. A boot with a thin heel says its owner lands too hard. A split seam says a foot turned when it should have slid. A sole worn at the big toe says someone pushes well, perhaps too well. The cobbler shows the boy how to cut a leather patch the shape of a leaf, how to lay it so the stitch will be wide and flat, not a lump that rubs a blister into a march. He taps nails in a ring round the heel and rubs oil into a strap so it will bend without cracking. The boy thinks of the rule board no shoes in the hall and feels the rule grow roots. What stays off the boards lives longer. In a moment, a runner will be sent to the bazaar, and errands will step outside the gate for a short, careful walk. Not every supply lives inside the barracks. A slip of paper with neat writing and a seal sends 2 boys to the nearest market lane for fresh greens and a bundle of mint. They walk in pairs with their sandals on, caps straight, eyes forward but not blind. The city sounds like a soft drummer call from a stall, a mule's harness chiming, a woman laughing at a joke that does not need words. The boys keep to the edge, make their purchase with the storekeeper's folded money, and return by the same route, saying little. A soldier is a guest in every street until called otherwise. Inside the gate, they hand the herbs to the cook, who thanks them with a look and a word. In a moment, the afternoon tilts toward the pay table, where coins make their own music. Day is quiet ceremony. A longboard rests on trestles, the ledger sits open, and a small cloth bag of silver ackee lies in reach of the paymaster. Names are called company by company. The boy steps forward when his new name is spoken, places his hand to his heart, and waits without shuffling. His stipend is not grand. Many historians think it was modest for novices, with a larger share in food and clothing than in coin. Still, coin matters. The paymaster counts into his palm and states the number aloud. The steward repeats it and marks the ledger. The boy repeats it again. 3 voices hold the amount so no one has to guess. Later, in a moment, he will learn the rule that travels with money, the way a scabbard travels with a blade. A portion is set aside at once for the company's common needs: soap thread, a new ladle when an old one wears thin. Another portion may be kept for a small personal thing, a better needle, a spare cap, a bit of wax for string. If the boy has family, he may send a coin with a letter on the next caravan. The scribe will write the sum on the folded page, and the clerk will note it in the margin. The rest goes into a pouch that ties inside his vest, where hands do not wander. There is no place here for showing off. Pride earns a chore, care earns sleep. In a moment, the pay table will turn into a lesson in weights, because some coins arrive. Worn thin. The paymaster keeps a little balance with beam and pans. If a coin is too light, he replaces it. If it is nicked, he changes it. The boy watches and learns to feel the difference between honest wear and trouble. He also learns the small trick of flattening a bent coin under a mallet wrapped in leather, without marring the face. Money, like bows and spoons, likes gentle hands. The ledger drinks 1 more line of ink, and the boy moves aside for the next name. We return to the morning school in our minds, and see how those numbers and words live. Well, here, in a moment, the corridor will send him to a room that smells of glue and ash, where simple crafts keep nervous energy from growing teeth. Arrow-making day arrives like a gift. Not everyone fletches, not everyone strings bows, but many learn enough to help. The boy sits with a small pot of hide glue warming near a brazier. He dips the base of a feather, smooths it along the shaft, and binds it with thin thread in a tight spiral that looks like a drawn line. He sets the arrow in a rack too, dry with its brothers, each one turned the same way, each one given the space it needs. Across the room, another recruit twists bowstrings from linen. 3 strands, then 3 again, then both together, in a counter-twist that makes the cord sing when plucked. The room hums with work that gives the mind a leash, and the hands a job. In a moment, a steward will bring a basket of broken buckles and ask for small repairs. Metalwork here is modest. A pin lost from a buckle is replaced. A strap gets a new hole made with a punch and a mallet. A hook is bent back to true with a tap and a glance. The boy learns the feel of enough, the point where a tap turns from helpful to harmful. A senior makes him file a sharp edge smooth until it cannot snag cloth, and the boy does it without sighing because he has seen how a rough edge can open a seam on a march. The craft tables are the school's softest teachers. They turn impatience into something useful and leave tools better than they found them. In a moment, we will step to the laundry line, because cloth is the first skin of a day. Washing belongs to everyone. Shirts soak in a trough with ashes that make a mild lie. Clean water pours from a jar that nobody wastes. Cloth is wrung and beaten on a plank that takes the blows without complaint. The boy learns to pin sleeves so they dry fast, and to hang trousers so they do not twist. Sun and wind do much of the work. Hands do the rest. A good wash makes drills easier tomorrow, the same way a good polish made the yard safer today. The line becomes a row of bright flags for a small state, with a simple motto: clean is ready, ready is kind. In a moment, the day will point back toward the pay table for one last lesson. How help moves through a house without fanfare. Beside the ledger sits a second book with a smaller hand. It tracks small loans and gifts a spoon to this man when he lost his, a coin to that boy for medicine, a handful of flour to a cook when the market ran thin. Each line shows who gave, who received, and a plan for balancing later. The steward keeps the tone gentle. This is not debt that snarls. It is a record that lets gratitude breathe. A company that knows where its kindness went can be generous again without confusion. The boy sees his name once, beside a small clasp he had to borrow, and he is proud to bring it back clean and whole. In a moment, the errands will close their circle, and the corridor will open to sound. All afternoon, little tasks have taught the same big thing. A soldier here is also a housekeeper, a craftsman, a clerk in simple hours. He has learned the path, from shelf to ledger, to hand and back again. He has tied a coin into his vest, and tied a string that will one day sing on a bow. He has carried rope that might hold a tent or a bridge, and mended a cuff that would keep cold from becoming a complaint. Every step has been small and therefore strong. We return to the quiet questions from our opening: what a recruit actually does all day, and how a house of many men stays gentle land. The answer has filled the halls. Errands, craft, and pay, all stitched into belonging. In a moment, music will rise from the training ground like warm wind. The meta will set a beat that even the walls can feel. Banners will unfurl. Feet will learn to match the drum without trying. March and morale will walk into the day together, and the crafts of the afternoon will follow them like good luggage, light, sturdy, and ready for the next road. For now, the boy wipes glue from his fingers, closes the tiny knife, and smooths the page of his notebook where a new word has settled. The house hums, the gate waits, and the rhythm of the cause, which has lived inside pots and ledgers, is about to step outside where everyone can hear it. The meta's rhythm arrives first as a tremor in the floorboards, and then as a pattern you can hum without meaning to. Far enough away to be gentle, close enough to draw lines on the yard. The music gathers the boys before any command is spoken. A deep drum sets the heart's pace. A pair of bright plates kiss and part. A reedy pipe carries a tune that feels older than the walls. It is not a concert, it is a clock. Shoulders roll back as if a tailor had tugged a seam, and feet, which learn to whisper all day, now prepare to speak together. In a moment, the drum will give the first clear signal, and steps will answer. The pace is not fast. Many historians think the marching step was closer to a firm walk than a run, set to a beat that lungs can love for hours. The first command is barely more than a nod, and the front rank begins, left foot kissing the ground on the first beat, right foot on the second. Arms do not swing wildly. Hands rest where they will not bump a neighbor. The line breathes like a single chest, 2 steps in, 2 steps out, just as the morning taught. A boy feels the ground give a little under each sole and understands why clean boards and soft knees were drilled into him. In a moment, the yard will narrow on purpose. and the line will learn to fold without tearing. Passing the gate is a lesson in shrinking. Files tighten, ranks shorten, and the group becomes a ribbon that can slip through a narrow sleeve. The drum changes to a lighter pattern, to quick taps, a space. To tap sound, the front rank adjusts without looking back. A senior's hand floats up and draws a circle in the air. Wheel left around the fountain, now wheel right. It looks like a dance, and in a way it is, but the dance has a job. If you can pass a gate together without stepping on sandals, you can pass through fear together later. The boy catches himself smiling when the line opens again on the far side like a sail unrolling. In a moment, banners will join, and color will teach what words cannot. The company banner is not large, but it is proud. A square of cloth stitched by careful hands, a fringe that catches sun, a headpiece shaped like a small finial, nothing extravagant, nothing sloppy. The man who carries it keeps his wrist soft and his elbow obedient. The rule is simple. Flags do not like mud. When the banner passes the chasm's corner, it dips the smallest bow, a greeting from color to cauldron that says, "We remember who feeds us." The boy feels that bow in his chest and realizes that a pot and a piece of cloth can speak the same language. In a moment, a different banner will appear in a story told softly, and the yard will listen harder. There are tales of a sacred standard kept for great campaigns, carried only on days when danger and duty were married in public. Those stories travel with care, and the boy hears them from elders the way a child hears a family legend at a winter fire, respectfully, with the knowledge that he is not yet part of that page. For today, his world is the company flag and the rules around it. Do not touch without permission. Do not pass on the wrong side. Do not let wind bully it into a fence. Small laws, strong feelings. In a moment, the drum will show why music is more than morale. It is also a tool. Beats carry messages. A roll that grows and stops can mean prepare. Two long strokes can mean halt. A bright burst can mean open ranks. The boys have learned these meanings without a single lecture, by watching the older men move as if the drum had taken them by the hand. The pipe's tune wanders above like a ribbon, but the drum's pulse is the spine. It keeps tired minds from wandering and tired feet from moving faster than lungs can manage. Pride without swagger lives in this restraint. No one races the drum. No one drifts. The boy remembers the yard's proverb: slow is smooth. Smooth is fast and hears it in the rhythm. In a moment, the line will practice greetings, because steps also speak to people. A captain passes, and the front rank gives a small incline of the head while keeping cadence. A senior from another company appears with a staff across his shoulder. The banner dips again, just a breath, acknowledging age and rank without drama. The rehearsal for meeting the Sultan is done without fanfare, too. The line stands a little taller. The drum softens. The pipe holds a long note like a held breath, and then the march resumes with the same even pulse. Etiquette and endurance walk side by side. You can carry a salute without dropping your rhythm. In a moment, weapons will step into the march, not to scare, but to teach hands where to live. Matchlocks ride on shoulders in a position that minds and neighbors trust. Barrels point high, locks turned away from faces, cords tied so they do not snag. On a certain beat, the line rehearses the simple geometry of bringing the stock across the chest and back again. A gesture that must one day be crisp, but today is merely clean. Spears in another file tilt, like a field of slender trees when a breeze passes. The change is small, so no eye is poked. Wooden sabers rest in scabbards, with the discipline that learned first in the laundry. Nothing here looks like a painting of fury. It looks like the preparation of people who wish not to hurt each other, while practicing 4 times when hurting will be ordered. In a moment, a chant will surface, low and steady. Sometimes, before a long drill, or after a good march, the men speak. A short goal bank, a collective prayer for steadiness and courage. More murmur than shout, more weaving than thrust. It gathers the mood of the room, and points it straight ahead. The boy repeats the words he knows, and lets the ones he does not ride on the breath of the man to his right. Many historians think such spoken habits mattered more to morale than speeches. They made effort feel shared and made order feel alive. In a moment, a ceremony of a different kind will arrive with a tray of sweet bowls and the smell of spice. On certain holy days, the kitchen sends out a pudding thick with grains and fruit, and the companies eat a spoon of it together. The bowls are small, the taste is generous, and the act is as old as patience. A boy who has never had such sweetness in a barracks learns that shared treats are a kind of glue. The meta often plays on such days, the drum rolling like a distant hill, the pipe bright as a bird. For an hour, pride lives in balance, full bowls, polished brass, even steps, pressed seams. It is hard to swagger when your spoon is in your hand and your banner is nodding politely to the pot. In a moment, small awards will be given in a tone that teaches the difference between show and example. When a recruit has kept his ledger clean for a month, or when a novice has learned to load and clean a matchlock without a stumble, he might be called forward to receive a token, a better belt, a new cap, a good word in front of the board. The captain does not make a parade of it. He names the effort, places the item in the boy's hands, and moves on. Praise here is like salt in pilaf. You taste it fully because it is not poured carelessly. The boy watching learns what wins attention: steady hands, clean work, care for the man beside you. In a moment, the march will leave the yard, and the city will become a patient teacher. A column on the street is a promise to the neighborhood that soldiers can be guests. The meta does not try to drown the market. It keeps a dignified step that cartwheels and shopkeepers can predict. Banners do not scrape awnings. Drums do not frighten animals on purpose. Children stare and then imitate this step, with wooden spoons for batons. Elders count silently, with their lips, and nod when the pivot at the corner is neat. The boy learns that morale is not only about feeling brave, it is about making others feel at ease in your presence. If the city breathes easier when you pass, you are doing it right. In a moment, the column will return through the gate, and the drum will teach one last lesson. Stopping together is art. The last roll comes, the front rank's heel marks a line without looking. The second rank stops with its toes a hand's breadth behind the first. The rear ranks stack in a tidy row that could be measured with a piece of string. There is a heartbeat of silence, a thin gold coin of stillness, and then the step back, the stand at ease, the exhale that makes the courtyard feel larger. The boy feels taller not because anyone praised him, but because his feet and lungs agreed for a long time. The meta's tune drifts away like a boat, and work shoes become house sandals again. In a moment, banners will return to their hooks, and a small ritual will say thank you without the word. The banner is wiped where hands touched it, as if palms had left stories in the cloth. The finial is checked for a loose screw. The pole is laid on its pegs with a small bow of the head. The drumskins are loosened so they will not grow tight and crack in the dry air. The pipe is wrapped in cloth that smells faintly of cedar. Instruments sleep better when cared for, and people sleep better when instruments sleep. The boy glances at the kazan on its shelf, at the ledger on its table, at the weapon rack now tidy, and feels how these objects are a family that takes turns being leaders. In a moment, we will pick up a myth and set it down gently. Stories sometimes paint Janissary as always fierce, always clashing cymbals and stamping feet in thunder. Today has shown a different truth beside that picture. Pride here is as much about quiet as about sound. The meta gives courage, yes, but it also gives pace. The banners inspire, yes, but they also remind hands to be gentle. The ceremonies knit people into a garment that fits many shoulders without chafing. Swagger would only wrinkle it. The boy senses that he is wearing this garment already, though it will take years to feel completely his. Before the light lowers, the captain speaks a few calm lines. He thanks the men who carried the banner and the drum, nods to the boys whose steps saved space, and reminds everyone that tomorrow's work will begin again with water and breath. He does not warn, he invites. The mood in the yard is the same as the pudding's flavor: simple, warm, communal. The boy slips a coin into the small common box for soap and thread, because he can. He is learning that morale is built by tiny gifts as much as by songs. We return to our earlier thread. Clean is ready. Ready is kind, and see how the music has kept it true all afternoon. In a moment, the lamps will lean toward the bathhouse, and the sound of the day will change from drum to splash. Banners will rest, shoes will line up like good students. The meta's tune will echo in memory, but not in ears. and the recruit who this morning breathed with a line and this afternoon learned to carry color without pride, will sit on warm stone and become one of those older men who one day moves a room simply by tying a sandal. The march has not ended, it has simply slowed. Evening will take it up with steam and stories, and a last lesson by lamp will place a smooth stone on the day steam carries. The days dust away as if it were a borrowed coat. The bathhouse is not far, and the walk there has its own calm rules. Straight, sandals quiet, no jostling in the alley, greetings given with a hand to the heart. The lamps over the door wear little halos in the mist, and a steward counts boys without sounding like a gate. Inside, the first room is warm, not hot, with benches along the walls, and a fountain that speaks in a low voice. You sit, you breathe, and your skin remembers that you are not made only for drills and ledgers. In a moment, the door to the hotter room will open like a page turned, and the day will soften further. Heat is a teacher with no tongue. Stone underfoot holds warmth. Air carries water so fine it feels like a friendly weight on the shoulders. A boy sits on a slab and watches steam rise from his forearms. An older recruit shows how to wash without wasting, how to rinse a bowl and set it down so another hand finds it easily, how to use a rough cloth to wake tired skin without making it angry. Laughter hums when someone forgets which jug is warm, and which is cool. It never turns sharp. Even here, the same quiet grammar rules. Move so your neighbor can rest. Speak so your words cannot slip under the door and disturb the street. In a moment, a pumice stone will rasp lightly, and a story will begin. Stories, like steam, rise best in a steady room. An elder, shoulders scarred only by sun, leans back and tells of a march years ago when the drum carried a column across a river by a bridge of boats. He does not list victories. He lists lessons. Watch your feet on wet boards. Oil your bowstring at dusk, not at dawn. Eat when you are told, even if you think you are not hungry. The boys smile because these are the same rules that lived inside the yard and the kitchen, just wearing travel clothes. He speaks of the spring air outside the city walls, the smell of crushed grass under sandals, the way the banners fringe caught light like fish scales. He leaves out what would tighten throats at night. In a moment, someone else will add a small story that is really a proverb. A younger man talks about the first time he guarded the company cauldron on the road. It swayed like a baby in a cradle, he says, and every step was a promise not to spill what belonged to all. He laughs softly at how seriously he watched the lid, and the room laughs with him because they know the feeling. In this place, pride wears work clothes. A boy who hears this knows what honor looks like in his near future. A chance to carry something that belongs to everyone and to bring it back full. The bath makes room for that thought to settle. The way hot stones hold heat without glow. In a moment, cold water will tighten the skin and seal the lesson. Before leaving, each person lets a last bowl of cool water fall from the shoulder to the hand and down to the floor. A small shock that feels like punctuation, a full stop at the end of a long, clear paragraph. Then towels. The good ones feel like new bread smells. The room outside is cooler, and talk shifts from stories to small plans. Tomorrow, early, someone says, and another nods, thinking of the ledger column that will wait. Hair is combed without mirrors. Caps go on still warm from the bench, and sandals find feet as if they had waited on purpose. In a moment, the walk back will borrow moonlight, and the barracks will feel like a hearth again. Evening brings a simple drink instead of a meal, sherbet, made with water and fruit, or a touch of rose. Sometimes a hot cup of something with mint. The kitchen keeps its voice low, and bowls return to their shelves like birds to a ledge. A short prayer draws the line between work and sleep. The boy mouths words he now knows by heart, hears the soft rise and fall around him, and feels how a shared voice settles muscles better than silence alone. Many historians think this rhythm wash, drink, pray helped barracks hold their shape on heavy days. In a moment, a lamp will call to a table, and the house will become a school one last time. The night lesson is small by design. A teacher places a short text on the board, maybe a proverb about patience, or a few lines that link duty and kindness. Boys copy them into notebooks, as lamps paint a gentle circle on each page. Reed pens scratch like crickets. The boy's hand, warmed by the bath, behaves on the paper. He writes the word for advance beside the word for earn, and the two look related in the lamp's light. A senior checks posture and smiles when a back straightens without a groan. In a moment, numbers will appear again, this time as dates and seasons, with a spring line that makes every recruit listen. Campaign season, the elders say, begins when roads forgive the weight of carts. The boy learns that not every spring means marching for him. Novices often stay to guard, cook, carry, and learn, but the house shifts anyway. Gear is checked a second time without being asked. Ropes coil themselves more politely. A chest of slow matches is counted like coins. The drum that set the afternoon's pace sleeps near the door. An older janissary, thin as a reed, and twice as useful, explains how assignments arrive, when a novice moves from the Assimi school to a company, when a line in the ledger grows into a place on the roll, what a new cap looks like when it belongs to you and not to the shared rack. In a moment, titles will be named softly, like stars. Words like room chief and soup chief are introduced as jobs rather than honors. You earn them by the way you place your sandals. Someone jokes, and the boys grin because they know it is half true. The path forward is a path through small tasks done without a drum, holding the watch without being watched, returning a borrowed buckle on time, keeping a roll of names that matches faces without error. Pay will change by a little, respect by a lot. The first winter, after a good year, a boy might find he is trusted to carry the banner's pole from its pegs to the hook. Not the banner itself, just the pole, and he will do it as if it were glass. In a moment, the lamp will burn lower, and the final quiet of the day will settle like new snow. Before mats appear, the hall takes one last breath of clean air. Windows open and close in order. Sandals line up in pairs with their toes leveled, like a row of little boats. Guard the pot, the elders say out of habit, and someone checks the lid even though no steam rises now. The boy unrolls his mat in 3 motions that feel older than he is, fluffs his thin pillow, and tucks his spoon and small notebook, where his hand can find them in the morning. Lamps tilt down and glow like low stars. The hush that arrives is not empty, it is full of people who kept their promises today. In a moment, the scribe will sit at the end of the hall with a bundle of letters and a patient pen. A few boys bring folded pages. The scribe reads softly for those who cannot, then helps write replies in the same simple hand used on the board at noon. I bathed and feel new, one boy says, and the pen writes it. I learn the drum's 3rd signal, another says, and the words become neat ink. Coins for home are tied into the folds, and the clerk notes their weight beside the names. The hallway has the sound of a beehive at dusk. Everything is done. Everything hums. In a moment, the scribe will douse his lamp with a careful breath, and dreams will become the only work allowed. Sleep comes because the day has earned it. The boy lies on his side and counts breaths the way he counted heartbeats holding a bow. 1, 2, 3, turn. 1, 2, 3, rest. In the dark, the morning's proverb returns like a lullaby. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast, and he hears it now as a promise for dreams too. If he listens farther, he might hear the kitchen whispering to its kettles, the armory speaking to its clean racks, the ledger closing itself with a small sigh. This house is not a barracks tonight, it is a hearth. In a moment, you can almost feel the future stepping toward him as softly as he learned to step in the hall. In that near future, the newcomer becomes a brother. He will be asked to lead a line through a narrow gate and will not bump a single shoulder. He will carry the company's cauldron 1 mile on a crowded street without spilling a spoon. He will be trusted to teach a new boy how to fold a mat in 3 motions and to do it without making the motion a weapon. He may march with a banner one day, and if he does, he will remember to bow toward the pot with a gesture so small only the boys who bathed with him will see it. Advancement here looks like being asked to be the kind of person you have watched all year. The lamp near the steward's pillow makes a small circle on the wall. Inside that circle, the day is written in simple lines: water, prayer, body, letters, pot, tools, rules, errands, song, steam, and sleep. You were promised a day without shouting, and found one that worked like a well-tuned instrument. You were promised space for school, prayer, laughter, and a letter home, and each found its seat at the table. The boy who walked in with a bundle and a name that would soon share space has gathered new words, new habits, and new brothers. If the season asks for travel, he will answer. If it asks for patience, he will answer that too. For now, he answers only to rest. And as the room breathes, you can drift with it. The sandals wait, turned toward the door. The kazan gleams faintly, as if it dreams of tomorrow's steam. The banner sleeps on its hooks. The drumskins slack so they will not complain. The recruit's notebook lies under his hand. The word become inked on the last line he wrote by lamp. In a moment, if you wish, we can gather the day into a gentle closing and leave the hall to its quiet. But it will not mind if you stay and listen a little longer to the small, regular sound of a house at peace. The open questions we set down at the start have simple answers now. How did a teenager learn to stand in a line that never wobbled? He learned it before dawn, with water on his face and breath in time, with feet that measured one hand's width from a neighbor and knees that stayed soft. The line was not forced. It was taught by quiet repetition until stillness felt natural. How did he learn to shoot or draw a bow without hurting the man beside him? He learned step by step, with close targets and slow releases, with space kept by habit, with the small rule that guided every hour stop before sloppiness, not after pain. And how did eating from a cauldron become a kind of flag? It became so because the kazan fed fairness into pride each day, the ladle moving like a promise kept in front of witnesses. There was room for school, prayer, laughter, and a letter home because the house was built for all of them. Letters were folded after clean ink and steady hands. Prayers framed the hours without pressing on them. Laughter lived in games that taught balance, and in the bath's easy steam, the scribe and the steward turned care into lines that everyone could read. The day was busy, yes, but it was never loud for long. Work and rest traded places like partners who knew the steps. A soldier here was also a housekeeper, a student, a helper, and a friend who could tie a sandal without waking a room. If you look back across the hall, you can see that true leaders were the small habits. Shoes turned toward the door, bowstrings waxed before they frayed, coins counted aloud by 3 voices so trust could relax. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, clean is ready, ready is kind. Do not shame your pot. These little sentences carried more weight than shouts ever could. They kept danger safe, kept hunger fair, and kept many bodies living as one without bruising each other. The picture that remains is gentle. A banner bows toward a cauldron as it passes. A drum teaches lungs a pace they can love. A ledger remembers, so tempers do not have to. A recruit signs both his names and learns that belonging does not erase history. It adds another page to it. When campaign season comes, he will be ready because he has practiced readiness in 100 quiet ways, washing well, walking true, lifting together, writing clearly, listening first. If your eyes are heavy now, that is fitting. The lamps in the hall are tilting low. Sandals rest in pairs like small boats at a dock. The kazan gleams as if it dreams of tomorrow's steam. The banner sleeps on its hooks, and the drumskins are slack, grateful. You can let your breath match the room's easy in, easy out, and let the day fold itself on your behalf. If you like this slower way of walking through history, you can subscribe and we will keep visiting old rooms together, softly. For now, close your eyes and keep the simplest lesson near. When many people must share one gate, care is strength, and quiet is the fastest path home.